Vacate the room. My dad said the moment my brother walked in with his wife. Not asked, not suggested. Ordered. He pointed at my suitcase like I was temporary in a house I had paid for. I stood up slowly, picked up my phone and sent one message. Activate the clause. 2 days later, the lawyer didn't just remove me from that room. He removed all of them from the house. Zubair moved back into his family home for a short time after relocating his business to the same city. He was working hard to grow his tech contracting company, and staying at home helped him save money and focus on new projects. Every month, he paid his share of the mortgage without being reminded. He never argued about bills, space, or house rules. He believed that supporting his family was the right thing to do, and he did it quietly. The house felt calm when he was alone there, and everyone respected the arrangement. One day, his older brother arrived unexpectedly with his wife, Zelica. They said they only needed a temporary place to stay while they settled some personal matters. At first, the family welcomed them warmly. It seemed like a normal visit, and everyone thought it would be short. Zubair even helped move their bags and made space for them. He believed sharing the home would not cause any problem. But the atmosphere in the house slowly began to change. Small comments started during meals. The living room felt more crowded. Decisions about rooms, furniture, and daily routines were suddenly discussed in a different tone. Zelica often spoke confidently about how things should be arranged. Her presence felt strong, and she paid close attention to the house layout and habits of the family. Zubair noticed that conversations were becoming more about control than comfort. What was once a peaceful home started to feel tense. His brother began acting as if the visit might last longer than planned. The idea of temporary support started to sound less clear. Zubair did not complain. He stayed polite and continued paying his mortgage share on time. He believed respect would keep the balance stable. However, the shift in energy was obvious. The house that once felt shared began to feel divided. Zubair sensed that something was changing, even if no one said it directly. The return of his brother and Zelica did not just bring extra people into the house. It quietly changed the atmosphere, the conversations, and the power inside the home. Years earlier, the house had almost been lost. Their father was struggling with money, and the bank had sent warnings about foreclosure. The family was stressed and afraid. That was when Zubair stepped in quietly. He did not argue or try to control the situation. He simply wanted to help protect the home. He spoke with the bank and agreed to co-sign the refinancing papers so the loan could be adjusted and the payments made more manageable. The new agreement allowed the family to keep the house. At the time, everyone saw it as support. They thanked him and believed he had only helped as a responsible son. What they did not carefully read was the full legal structure of the deal. The documents were long and complicated. Zubair had made sure to review them with a lawyer before signing. He understood that if he was going to take financial responsibility, his name needed protection too. So the refinancing included special conditions. One of those conditions was a survivorship clause. This meant that if certain events happened, ownership rights would shift in a specific way instead of remaining fully under the father's control. There was also an equity protection agreement. This part ensured that the money Zubair invested, including future increases in property value, would be legally recognized. It was not just a simple co-signing. It was a structured financial arrangement that gave him a strong legal position. The family never discussed these details at dinner. They did not sit down to fully understand what the paperwork meant. They trusted that everything was normal because the house remained in the family. Over time, they forgot that Zubair's name was deeply connected to the property records. His contribution was not just monthly payments. It was formal, documented, and registered. Because of this structure, Zubair was not only helping with expenses, he had built legal equity in the home. The agreement made him more than a supporter. It made him a majority equity holder under the terms of the contract. That detail changed everything. While others believed he was living there as a family member, the documents showed a different truth. His position was stronger than anyone realized, and it was all written clearly in the signed papers. Zelica was not just a visitor. She worked as a corporate attorney, so she understood contracts, ownership, and legal power. One evening, while the family was talking in the living room, she asked to see the house documents. She said it was only out of interest, but she read them carefully. She did not rush. She checked every page, every signature, and every clause. As she read, she began to notice something important. Zubair's name was not there by accident. The papers gave him stronger rights than most family members expected. His name carried serious legal weight. Zelica realized that the structure of the agreement did not leave the father with full control. It showed shared authority and protected equity. This meant that decisions about the house could not be made freely without considering Zubair's rights. Instead of explaining this clearly to everyone, Zelica kept her thoughts private. She understood that if the family fully understood the documents, the balance of power in the house might change. Rather than advising open discussion or suggesting that everyone sit down to review the agreement together, Zelica chose a different approach. She spoke privately to her father-in-law. She told him that if they did not act soon, they could slowly lose control of the household decisions. She framed the situation as a matter of respect and authority. Her words were calm, but they carried pressure. She suggested that the house should clearly belong under the father's leadership again. Her influence began to shape conversations inside the home. She encouraged stronger boundaries and clearer control over space and rules. She reminded the father that he should not appear weak in front of his sons. Her legal understanding gave her confidence, and her advice was focused on power rather than cooperation. Zelica's role quietly changed the atmosphere. She was not making loud demands, but her suggestions affected decisions. By pointing out Zubair's leverage without addressing it openly, she created tension. Instead of solving the situation through transparency, she guided the family toward reasserting dominance. This shift added pressure to the home, and it set the stage for the conflict that would follow. During dinner, the family was sitting together at the table. The food was served, and the room was quiet at first. Small talk turned into a discussion about space in the house. Zelica mentioned that they needed a more comfortable arrangement. She said it would be better if they stayed in a larger room for a longer time, since their situation was not yet stable. Zubair listened calmly. He did not raise his voice. He only explained that his room was already arranged for his work and daily routine. The conversation became slightly tense. Some family members agreed with Zelica. Others stayed silent. The father watched the discussion carefully. He did not show anger, but he seemed focused. After a short pause, he spoke firmly. In a clear voice, he told Zubair that he should vacate his room. He said the room would now be given to his brother and sister-in-law. The words were simple, but they carried strong meaning. It was not presented as a request. It was an order. The father explained that family comes first and that Zubair should understand the need for sacrifice. He said this decision would help keep peace and comfort for everyone. The tone was not emotional or heated. It sounded controlled. However, the message was about authority. It was about who had the right to decide how the house was used. The father spoke as if the house belonged fully to him, and as if his word was final. Zubair felt the shift in that moment. He realized this was not about a temporary arrangement anymore. It was about control of space and status inside the home. The request was not framed as cooperation. It was framed as expectation. Everyone at the table became quiet. The atmosphere felt heavy. Zubair did not argue. He kept his face calm. But inside he understood that this order had deeper meaning. It showed that his contribution and legal position were being ignored. The decision was made publicly in front of others, which made it stronger. It was not just about a room. It was a statement of dominance. The father had drawn a clear line, deciding who should move and who should stay. That dinner moment changed the balance inside the house. When Zubair refinanced the house years earlier, he did not sign the papers without thinking. He knew he was taking a big financial responsibility, so he wanted protection too. He had already helped save the home, but he also wanted clear legal rights. With the help of a lawyer, he added a special protective clause to the agreement. This clause was written carefully into the contract and attached as an official addendum. It was not hidden in secret, but it was detailed and easy to overlook if no one read every page. The clause said something very important. If Zubair was formally displaced from the property, or if he was denied access to his own home under the agreement, a specific legal process would begin. The property would not remain unchanged. Instead, it would trigger a forced sale option. This meant the house would have to be sold according to the terms in the contract. The purpose was to protect his investment and prevent anyone from pushing him out while keeping his money tied inside the home. The agreement also stated that when this forced sale happened, Zubair would recover his full invested equity. That included the money he had paid over time, plus a percentage based on the property's increase in value. This appreciation percentage was important because the house had grown in market value. The clause ensured he would not lose the benefit of that growth. It protected both his effort and the financial rise of the property. At the time of signing, the family did not focus on this part of the document. The papers were long, and the refinancing felt like a simple solution to save the house. Everyone trusted that the arrangement would just keep the family together. They did not review the addendum line by line. Some assumed it was standard banking language. Others did not fully understand how serious the clause was. Because of that, no one remembered how strong the agreement actually was. The clause was legally binding, signed, notarized, and recorded. It was not a casual promise. It was part of the official property structure. It sat quietly in the documents, waiting to be activated if the conditions were met. When the father later ordered Zubair to vacate his room, the family did not think about the refinancing terms. They believed it was only a family matter. But the clause was still there. It had never disappeared. And according to the contract, formal displacement could activate the forced sale option. The detail everyone ignored was now the key to what would happen next. After the dinner order, Zubair did not shout or argue. He did not try to fight in front of the family. He stayed calm that night and went to his room as usual. He understood that reacting with anger would only create more conflict. The next morning, while others were still starting their day, he made an important decision. Instead of speaking loudly at home, he chose to follow the legal process that was written in the agreement. He contacted the same real estate attorney who had helped with the original refinancing. He explained everything clearly and shared what had happened during dinner. He did not exaggerate. He simply described the exact words used by his father and the public instruction to vacate his room. The lawyer listened carefully and reviewed the contract again. Because the agreement had been properly recorded, the attorney could immediately see how the clause worked. To make the situation official, Zubair needed proof. Legal agreements depend on documentation, not emotions. So he checked his phone and found the written message from his father confirming the order to vacate. That message was important. It was not just a memory. It was evidence. Zubair sent the message to the attorney as confirmation of what had happened. He also kept copies of the conversation for his records. Everything was organized and saved. The attorney then compared the message with the protective clause in the contract. The clause clearly stated that if Zubair was formally displaced or denied access to the property, the forced sale option would be triggered. The written order from the father met the condition described in the agreement. Because the instruction was clear and documented, it was considered a formal displacement under the terms of the contract. Once the documentation was reviewed, the attorney began the official activation process. This was not done with drama or noise. It was done through proper legal channels. Notices were prepared according to the agreement. The house file was updated to reflect that the condition had been met. The system did not require emotions, only proof. And the proof was already in writing. By choosing to document instead of argue, Zubair followed the rules exactly as they were written. He did not change the agreement. He did not add new terms. He simply activated what had already been signed years ago. The moment the written eviction order was confirmed, the displacement condition became active, and the legal process started moving forward according to the contract. Within 2 days, the situation moved from private to official. A formal legal notice was delivered to the house. It was not a warning from a family member. It was an official document sent through legal channels. The notice clearly stated that, according to the agreement, the property now had to follow the terms of the forced sale clause. The message was simple and serious. Because the displacement condition had been activated, the house could not remain as it was unless a specific solution was completed. The notice explained that the property was required to be listed for sale within the given timeframe. This was not optional. It was written in the contract, and now the contract was being followed step by step. However, there was one way to stop the sale. The family could complete a buyout of Zubair's majority share. That meant they would have to pay him the full value of his equity, including the money he had invested, and the appreciation percentage based on the current market value of the home. The document also gave a deadline. The buyout had to be completed within 30 days. If they failed to pay the full amount within that time, the sale process would continue. The house would then be officially placed on the market under the legal requirements of the agreement. Everything was written clearly, with no confusion about the timeline or the conditions. When the family read the notice, the mood in the house changed again. The paper was direct and professional. It did not contain emotions or arguments. It only listed the terms of the contract and the steps that had to be followed. The father and brother realized that this was not a small disagreement anymore. It was now a financial and legal matter. They began to calculate the buyout amount. After checking the property's current market value and adding the appreciation percentage, the total was much higher than they expected. It was more than the savings they had available. It was also more than they could borrow quickly. The deadline made the situation even harder, because 30 days is not a long time for arranging such a large payment. The legal notice made one thing clear. The agreement was active, and the rules had to be followed. The house could either be bought back at full value under the terms, or it would proceed to sale. There was no middle option written in the contract. The document controlled the next step, not emotions or family discussions. When the legal notice arrived, the house felt different. The papers were no longer just documents in a folder. They were now active and serious. Zelica asked to see the original contract again. This time, she did not read it casually. She sat at the table with full focus, turning each page slowly. The pressure was real because the deadline was written clearly in the notice. The family waited for her to explain if there was any way to stop the process. Zelica checked the protective clause once more. She read the exact words about displacement and forced sale. She compared it with the message that had been sent by the father. Everything matched. The clause was not unclear. It was written in simple legal language. It had been signed by all parties years ago. There was no missing signature. There was no unclear term. The agreement had been notarized by a legal officer and officially recorded in the property files. As she reviewed it again, she understood that the strategy she had suggested earlier had changed the situation in a way no one expected. By pushing for stronger control without carefully studying the full contract, she had underestimated the power of the written agreement. The documents were stronger than opinions. They did not depend on emotions or family hierarchy. They depended only on signatures and recorded terms. Zelica realized that authority in a home is different from legal authority on paper. In the house, people can speak loudly or give orders. But in law, only written agreements matter. Because she had not fully considered the addendum and protective clause, the attempt to reassert dominance had triggered the very condition she wanted to avoid. The clause was airtight. It had no loopholes. It was signed by everyone involved. It was officially recorded with the property. That meant it could not be ignored or easily removed. Her plan to strengthen control had instead activated a legal response that could not be stopped without meeting the contract terms. At that moment, it became clear that confidence without careful document review can lead to serious consequences. The paperwork did not favor one side because of family position. It followed what was written. And what was written was now guiding the future of the house. After the deadline passed without a full buyout, the legal process continued as written in the agreement. The house was officially listed for sale. A professional real estate agent handled the process. Photos were taken, and the property was advertised in the market. Because of its good location and strong condition, interest came quickly. Many buyers visited to see the home. Some made serious offers within a short time. The house had value, and people recognized it. The family watched as strangers walked through the rooms. The same spaces that once felt private were now being measured, inspected, and discussed in financial terms. Every offer was reviewed according to the legal terms. Since the agreement required the sale, decisions were handled carefully and fairly. There was no way to stop the process unless the full buyout had been completed earlier. Because that did not happen, the sale moved forward. When the property was finally sold, the money from the sale was divided according to the contract. Zubar received his full equity payout. This included the amount he had invested over the years, plus the appreciation percentage based on the increased value of the house. The total amount was larger than he expected when he first signed the agreement. The protection clause worked exactly as planned. His financial contribution was returned with its growth included. With this payout, Zubair was able to move forward with his business expansion plans. He used the funds to strengthen his tech contracting company, invest in equipment, and secure new contracts. The money gave him stability and confidence. What once was tied inside the house was now supporting his professional growth. His position changed from shared responsibility to independent ownership in his own future plans. After the sale closed, the father and brother needed a new place to live. Since the house no longer belonged to the family, they arranged rental housing. They moved into a rented property that fit their budget. It was a different situation from owning the home, but it was the result of the agreement that had been signed years before. The consequence was clear. The legal terms had been followed from start to finish. The house changed ownership through the contract, and each person accepted the outcome based on the written rules. After the house was sold and the process was completed, there was no loud argument in the end. There were no more meetings at the dinner table, no raised voices, and no public demands. Everything ended the same way it began, through documents. The agreement was followed step by step, exactly as it was written. The signatures, clauses, and notices had done their work. There was nothing left to debate. The papers controlled the outcome, not emotions. Zubair did not celebrate or try to prove a point. He did not return to the house to show victory. Instead, he stayed calm and focused on his next move. With the money he received from the equity payout, he planned carefully. He looked for a new property that suited his needs and his future goals. He did not rush. He wanted something fully secure and independent. Soon after, he purchased a property under his own name. This time, there were no shared agreements or complicated clauses involving family members. The title was completely in his name. It was registered clearly, with no confusion about ownership. The documents were simple and direct. The home belonged to him alone. He moved in quietly, without announcing it to everyone. There was no drama, just a fresh start built on full ownership. The room he had been told to vacate earlier was never the real problem. It was not about furniture, space, or comfort. The real issue was control. The situation became serious because of ownership rights. Who had legal authority mattered more than who slept in which room. The conflict was never about temporary arrangements. It was about the power written in the contract. From that day forward, the family understood something important. Documents are not just papers. They carry legal strength. Before signing anything, they began reading every line carefully. They paid attention to clauses, addendums, and conditions. No one ignored details anymore. They realized that a single sentence in a contract can change everything. The final shift was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet and official. Zubair built his future independently, and the family learned to respect written agreements. The experience changed how they viewed ownership, responsibility, and legal decisions forever.